Hello and welcome everyone to the Yes Debate competition. This is Nishma Bandari, the Vice President of Yes Club and your host. And along with me, let me introduce you all to my co-host, Mr. Karuna Budhathoki, the Secretary of Yes Club. So before directly jumping into the debate, let me remind you all that today is International World Youth Skills Day. This day was designated by the UN General Assembly in 2014. This day marks an opportunity for young people, technical and vocational educations, and public and private sector stakeholders to acknowledge and celebrate the importance of equipping young people with skills for employment, decent work, and entrepreneurship. This day is very important for young people, especially like us, as we all are marching towards the difference. So, on the occasion of World Youth Skills Day, we have organized debate competition on the topic, Patriotism is Dangerous in the Context of Globalization, which we all are already familiar with. This debate competition is supported by Youth Opportunities Nepal, YU, and from there we have Mr. Teju Preti sir. He is also the Regional Coordinator of YU Nepal. So now is the time to introduce you all with our adjudicators. Our very first adjudicator is Ms. Vinita Karki, who is a well-known debater and also the winner of Nepal's Top 7 Debater. Presently, she is the Youth Program Officer at UNDP Nepal. Similarly, our second adjudicator is Mr. Raj Kharel, who is the former director at Debate Network Nepal, DNN, and presently he is the debate director at the Lawn Debate Society. So now it's time to know our executive and the board members of Yes Club. So at very first, we have our president, Mr. Pravesh Pan, me myself, the vice president, Nishma Bandari, our secretary, Mr. Gaurav Bandari, joint secretary, Ms. Nikita Yadav, event manager, Mr. Sakriya Pokhrel, treasurer, Mr. Pragyan Nyopani, program coordinator, Ms. Priya Shrestha, promotion coordinator, Mr. Sarbagya Bhatrai, advisor, Mr. Sahil Das Kusua, interactive media coordinator, Mr. Pujan Dakal, IT personnel, Basanta Adhikari, and from the board members, we have Mr. Susan Paudel, Ms. Samviti Shrestha, Mr. Ujjwal Jha, Ms. Trishti Kafle, Ms. Sukriti Kafle, and Mr. Kundan Sahi. So अब भने आजको हाम्रो यस डिबेट कम्पिटिसनको एकदमै महत्त्वपूर्ण भूमिका निभाउने हाम्रा पार्टिसिपेन्ट्सहरूलाई म नाम बोलाउन लागेकी छु. So from the affirmative team we have Ms. Apeksha Subedi, Mr. Sanjeet Chaudhary, and Mr. Suyogya Singh, and from the negative team we have Mr. Vivek Adhikari, Ms. Elena Parazuli, and Ms. Karuna Budhathoki.
Starting the debate, I would like to call Mr. Suyogya Singh to present the constructing speech for the motion within 5 minutes. Mr. Suyogya Singh.
From Stone Age to 21st century, human beings have learned to live in a group, and cluster of such groups formed an entity whereby the social contract, power to rule were assigned to certain person. And as this process was progressing, the definite borders were drawn out, but it still lacked the concept of sovereignty, which is the soul of history, later in the history. So the stage, talking about patriotism, it is one of the most strong driving forces globally, especially in the countries which got their independence from colonial rule through anti-colonial struggle. It is an immense love for the nation, which becomes chauvinism in its exaggerated form, in its intensified form. And since there was no concept of proper existence of sovereign state or the nation-state system, which I will be referring as NS system, for the Treaty of Westphalia, we can say that the patriotism is very recent product added in the English dictionary in 1800 AD, which is 152 years after the end of Westphalian era. Thus, patriotism was empirical from its very beginning. And as we know that how Nazi German chauvinists saw enemy within themselves, and Holocaust took place, which resulted into the death of 6 million Jews. This patriotism glorified the nation as an entity being above the people itself to look like patriotism. But if we see the concept of globalization, we can say that globalization existed much before the concept of sovereign state came to an existence, because we all know that how Indian merchants used to travel to Central Europe, to Africa, and to Middle East by crossing the whole portion of Indian and Atlantic Ocean, which also helped Vasco da Gama to explore the Indian subcontinent. And beside this, we have an example of Silk Route, which was one of the way to connect Asia with Africa and Europe in 2 BC. From then to now, the means of globalizing the world is definitely changed, but the process of integration of economy as world economy, national market as world market, and with assimilation and culturalization is solely the same. The burning issue is US and China trade war, where almost every day each country is putting new restriction over trade and supply of good manufactured in the country. The sanction over Iran, North Korea, and even Qatar is a great example of patriotism being one of the most dangerous components for globalization. Under globalization, all the people should feel equal and connected. But these restrictions make people to feel cheated and controlled by the state. After the post-war period, the spread of ideas, social value, and market around the world is suddenly being seen as danger on patriotism. Political parties who came to the power by riding the horse of nationalism or patriotism, so the government which they make are controlling the globalization economy. After this, we have an example of ban on TikTok, which India did recently. The TikTok has the downloading number of 467 million, which was banned by Modi 2.0 government because of the Galwan incident, which emotionally charged the people of India to quit TikTok and Chinese apps, which is against their consumer rights. Then the China joined WTO in 2001, but still it do not allow apps like Facebook, Google, and YouTube, which connect the majority of the world in 21st century. In fact, they have their own application for the substitute, but they do not give the freedom to speech and opinion to the Chinese users. It is well known to us that America and Japan shared very bitter relationship during the war and attack of Pearl Harbor, and retaliation of which America has nipped Japan, which was one of the most harsh incidents in the world history. But today, both these democratic giants have collaboration and partnership of 60 years, which would never have become possible without forgetting the raga of patriotism, which was the dominant emotion during the World War II between these nations. With this, I would like to conclude. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Suyogya. I think your internet bandwidth was quite low, but your references were really substantial. Now let's see what our Miss Karuna has to present against the motion in her constructive speech. Miss Karuna, 5 minutes.
Before we debate about this topic, we need to understand a term, nationalism. Nationalism is an exaggeration of the mother country above all. It was ugly, self-centered ultra-nationalism which started fascism, aka dictatorship rule, and enabled 2 greatest wars of the history. We need to learn the difference between nationalism and patriotism. Patriotism is love and devotion towards country, in which nationalism is loyalty and devotion, which often hold a negative connotation. My country, whether right or wrong, is greatest, but patriotism says my country, if it does right thing, is greatest. So patriotism is very dynamic in nature, as it depends upon country's deed, its impact on an individual. The past dictators like Adolf Hitler, Joseph Stalin, Benito Mussolini, they were not patriots. More specifically, they were imperialist or nationalist. So patriotism is not threat to globalization. ultra-nationalism is. And I'll be showing how patriotism will be a positive narrative for the paradigm of the globalization in my argument. My first argument, patriotism can promote national economy in large extent. Patriots are often considered those people who are proud of their country for its deed and for its great history. So patriot wants its country to flourish in trade globally. When this group of patriots are an income generating activity, they often manage the high yielding atmosphere to create the high profitable market in international trade. So this is the reason why true patriots often work for the betterment of the country rather than exaggerating country's greatness, though the country haven't progressed much. And my second argument is patriotism helps to connect people to our common core objective. When some threat like political issue come, patriots often show their virtue of loving their country and make nation prosper again. A simple example, if it weren't those patriotic Nepalese people who ended the monarchy from Nepal, Nepalese won't be enjoying global integration in globalized framework. Country, when prosperous by its people, tries to make global diplomacy which widens the horizon for the education and employment. So the key point is that patriotism helps the country to prosper and let it seek new venture in other countries. So patriotism promotes global fraternity. Another simple example to it, China, which has created Belt Road Initiative, which is the single largest globalization project, uses patriotism to unify its people. And my final argument is, third, global issue need patriotic support from the people all over the country. Global problems need globalized solution. World Value Survey was taken in 2014 among 62 countries among 89,000 people. Those people were asked a very simple question. Are you proud of your mother country? 88.5% of people said their answer in extremely proud. It showed that they were patriotic. When the same group of people were asked another simple question, do you consider yourself a global citizen? The answer yes was given by 71%. So from this survey, we can see that patriotic people are globalist and they respect the principle of globalization. Since a particular country can't solve a global issue like refugee crisis, climate change, etc. alone, it is very necessary for global organizations like UN, SAARC, NATO to come and act. So today's definition of patriotism is flourishing the country globally. For instance, I as a Bhutan can't solve the climate change alone, but the glacier melting of my country is threatening to the countries like Maldives and Sri Lanka, which are in verge of drowning. So patriotism inspires global collective frameworks such as Paris Climate Agreement, which impact globally and helps to reform climatic health of the countries around the globe. So at the end, I would like to say we can love our country and care for our world at the same time. Patriotism and globalization can coexist. With all these arguments, I'm very, very proud to oppose. Thank you very much.
Well constructed, Karuna. Patriotism promotes global fraternity. Let's see your counterpart agree or not. Now I'd like to call Mr. Suyagya and Ms. Karuna for our first crossfire round. Time limit for this round is 2 minutes.
First of all, I would like to say that you can't use the term nationalism and patriotism interchangeably, which they did in their argument. We need to differentiate between about the feeling invoked by Gandhi and feeling invoked by Hitler. And these both feeling have quite big differences in between them. Second thing is that patriotism do not open the economy or the country's economy, but it controls the economy. The finest example we have in the Nazi Germany, where they used barter system.
First of all, let me tell you one thing. Nazi Germany or the war generation is not only the patriotism. I have explained very briefly that patriotism and nationalism are two different things. Patriotism might be the base of nationalism, but let me tell you one thing, that patriotism is not nationalism. It is like you are contradicting the term. Patriotism means loving the country, being proud of the country because of the deeds it have done, because of its policy, because of the work it have done. But whereas nationalism is being proud of the country just because you are born there and holding the narrative, as I have already explained in my speech, my country, whether right or wrong, is greatest. So it is very necessary not to contradict the term patriotism and nationalism. And let me tell you, another thing. Germany, Italy, and Spain in war generation is not only the patriotism, honey. It is more like holding the Olympic game for your nation and feeling for it. All right, so that is not the patriotism, that is ultra-nationalism. Adolf Hitler, Benito Mussolini, Joseph Stalin, they showed ultra-nationalism, not patriotism, and they were imperialist. Another question?
Yeah, and you said that Nepal got its globalization phenomenon in a better way after the restoration of the democracy. Which was far better.
Excuse me, Karuna. I'd like to interrupt you. I think Crossfire Rand is for asking the questions, and you have Rebuttal for commenting on those questions. So please, you can ask the question in Crossfire.
Okay. So you said that Christopher Columbus or Vasco da Gama, when they set out for the discovery of the new lands, you want to say that they were globalists because they traveled around the globe. But do you want to say that they were not patriotic for their country, Mr. Suyogya Singh?
I do not mean that they were
not
for their nation, but at that time, the India was known as Akhanda Bharat, and the people were too patriotic. People were having too patriotic feeling about their princely estate. And in that time, Vasco da Gama came through the Bay of Calicut, and for 2 times the Indian do not let them to come in. But after understanding for what reason he is coming to the India, they let him in the country.
So, as far as I am concerned by your speech, you said that patriotism is power to rule a certain group of people. What do you mean by it? Sorry.
Well, thank you, Suyogya and Karuna. And now I think the participants are prepared for the rebuttal speech. I'd like to call Mr. Vivek Adhikari to present his rebuttal speech against the motion. Mr. Adhikari, 4 minutes.
The first proposition speaker, he used the issues like a nationalism in his speech and hesitantly changed into the patriotism later. Firstly, our side of the house has clearly stated the difference between the patriotism and the nationalism. Instead of taking that into account, they are talking about the past where the fascism, imperialism, dictatorship, and even colonialism brought to the wars, and they are shifting every blame of such issues into the patriotism, and that is really, really senseless. And secondly, you can't find the definition of patriotism on the dictionary or the Google. It's the feeling that changes over the time, context, and the countries. And how can you bring the issues of the centuries before of the Vasco da Gama into the context and debate for the patriotism and globalization in this world? That's senseless again. Thirdly, patriotism is not the isolationism that what North Korea does. Is not the patriotism here. Patriotism is an idea cannot stand with the global incorporation. Me as a patriotic citizen want my nation to have good diplomatic relation, trade interdependence, and participation on the global framework like Paris Climate Agreement. Furthermore, me as a country involve myself in a global incorporation like UN, NATO, ASEAN, SAARC, EU, or literally anything that empowers and protects me from my possible harms, ensuring my patriotic center. And like this, are a mentally unstable proposition because who in the world declares US, China, and Japan are the global unglobalized with a mere single or double instance? Can you even guess a country where US, China, Japan trade wave has not reached? And can you forget the largest consumer market over there? And how can you forget the internet and its subsidies that has technically connected the nook and corner of the world? And again, like this, they were talking about the border issues, right? The border issues between the country. The border issues are never brought by patriotism, as the true patriot doesn't want political instability in one's nation. And yeah, even if I talk on the prospect by eradicating patriotism, there is always national sovereignty protecting borders. And even if you don't want national sovereignty by the alternative left is the global governments, right? But it also has the unanswered challenges like inefficient or multilateral mechanism, trend of the geopolitical competition, difficulties of the unprecedented scale, and so on. And like this, I think the rebuttals are all over because that was very less. Here I will show the coexistence of the patriotism and globalization on the best and worst case scenario of my world. Okay, the principle of the globalism, think global, act local, seems fulfilled as the local patriots are unified and supportive of the macroeconomic and the infrastructural development. Similarly, they are positive towards the global projects like Chinese people are to the road belt and initiative in China. There is undoubtedly coexistence of the patriotism and globalism in the win-win scenario. But what if national problems like terrorism, border tension, political unrest, and global problems like pandemic and climate change alarms all of a sudden, and despite of the global treaties and agreements? Now see how my world will respond. Firstly, globalized context allows nation to use not only the nation's best but the world's best technology for the civil protection. And secondly, people are united and supportive to the national plans irrespective of the religion, culture, language, etc. And third, a single breakthrough solution on any nook can be universal in no time. So the fourthly, a political problem like mushrooming utopian communism, no problem of proposition, because don't panic because my world can still form NATO-like group to fulfill the individual patriotic objective with the groups. So lastly, talking about the practicality in the realism. The statistics as mentioned by the first opposition speaker about the world survey proves that globalism and patriotism are okay within it and they can coexist in the real world. But talking about your topic is really hypothetical and you can't really deny the feelings of the patriotism and you can't really eradicate it wholly as mentioned in your theory. So all the arguments seems baseless indeed. And other things, the patriotism on no any basis harms the humanitarianism, and it is always there with the humanitarianism, and it always thinks above of the religion, culture, caste, and so on. So I think I have rebutted all the points and added a few more points on the topic, adding with the first opposition speaker. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Vivek. There is always national sovereignty protecting the borders. That was so nice. Now, let's see what Ms. Apeksha Subedi has to say in her rebuttal speech for the motion. Time limit for this is also 4 minutes. Ms. Apeksha.
Thank you. Okay, so I start with whatever my previous opponent said in his rebuttal. He said, our topic is hypothetical, but sorry to say the topic is not hypothetical. You must have mentioned the arguments in the sentence you wanted to say. There are a lot of things that have been said by the opponent team, which is really illogical. Right now, my opponent member said patriotism does not come before religion, something. Patriotism is everything that comes that connects with the nation, right? You have already mentioned about what patriotism is and what nationalism is already, and no doubt nationalism is different from patriotism. We do not deny the fact, but your examples regarding BRI, let's say, talking about BRI itself, what was mentioned by the opposite team members was that BRI is a project that was put forward by China because of patriotism, and now there is global connectivity because of BRI. Do you know what the debt trap that is set by China, the debt trap that is being used by Chinese people, the Chinese government to different countries, and these countries are failing in their economy because of China. China is using this as a major tool to influence these countries to come and interact globally, but it is because of patriotic feeling that China has that these countries are failing in their economy because of the debt trap, as I already mentioned. Now, next thing is patriotism. What was said was by my opponent member was UN, SAARC, and other international platforms are
result of patriotism or something like that. But let me remind you, countries like USA did not even recognize Russia after the breakdown of Soviet Union in UN, because it feared that China or Russia would overcome their country's prosperity, and then because of those reasons, those patriotic feelings of the leaders of USA, these countries, Russia and China, did not get membership of the UN Security Council for China was not even recognized by UN for a very long time because of the patriotic feeling, and they were not connected to the global world. So next thing is, my opponent members are repeatedly mentioning about the Paris summit that was in 2015. Let me remind you, US has already withdrawn from the summit, and US no more obliges to the summit, and it has already said it is not obliged to follow any of the conventions that has been done, or that has been agreement that has been done during the Paris summit. Next thing my opponent members also mentioned was that it was because of the patriotic feeling of the Nepali people that monarchy came to an end and we got freedom. I don't know what, but let me remind you, it was during that monarchy you're talking about that these Nepal also had to. Okay, so I'll be concluding. Oh, next thing I forgot to mention is internet was a gift of patriotism, as somebody mentioned. Internet is not a gift of patriotism as such. Internet is connecting the world globally, but it is not related with patriotism at all. It is because of the liberalization that somebody invents something in any part of the world that everybody in the world gets to connect to. Internet is not something that comes from patriotism, and I don't know how you're trying to justify the fact that patriotism is related with internet or such kind of inventions. Yeah, that's it for now. Thank you.
Thank you, Apeksha. This debate is really getting interesting, and I think next second crossfire round will add on it. So I'd like to call Mr. Vivek and Ms. Apeksha for the second crossfire round. The time limit for this round is 2 minutes.
So, Mr. Vivek, would you clarify the statement that you made, like internet is connecting the world globally? How is it connected to the patriotism we're talking about?
Okay, listen. You were telling that at first. Okay, listen to the internet part, right? On the internet part, you were telling that the countries like Japan, India, America, and even China were not globalized, and they were not. They were just patriotic, and their patriotic feeling has not led the world to globalize. So I was just giving the example, like the YouTubes you are using, the social media you are using are from the US, and the US has followed the globalism, and so that we can use that product in our daily life. So that was I meant to say. And to
clarify, I never mentioned countries like Japan or something with the patriotic feeling. And next thing I would want you to clarify is, you mentioned something like patriotism is not isolation. But let me remind you, countries which have had higher degree of patriotism, love for the country, as you say, as an exaggerated form of patriotism, have enforced these isolation policies. Many these patriotism in its highest forms lead to dictatorships, as my previous team member has already mentioned, that leads to nationalism. And so these countries have also adopted isolation foreign policy because they want their countries to prosper more than rest of the part of the world. And also because a form of this kind of patriotism also is seen while the countries impose different tariff laws, quotas in import and export of goods. So how is this not related to such kind of foreign policy? How could you clarify this?
You say that you know about the patriotism and nationalism differently, but can I say?
Can complete the sentence.
But you're telling that you know about the difference of the patriotism and the nationalism, but you are constantly adding the same point, adding to the prospect of the nationalism, and you are also adding the points of the dictatorship and even imperialism, and that is nowhere related to the patriotism. And as I had already mentioned, shifting all the blame to the patriotism is senseless. And we know that the base is patriotism, but the higher versions like ultra nationalism and dictatorship, colonialism, imperialism, and fascism. We are not talking about that. So your arguments on that is really senseless.
That was really good encounter, Apeksha and Vivek. I'd like to request you to present summary against the notion, and time limits, Miss Alina, 4 minutes. Okay, you can start.
Thank you. Okay. Astonishing set of speeches by proposition so far, making this case a mixture of self-serving and selectively a farrago of misinterpretations and misunderstandings. The affirmative team has continuously and erroneously stated that patriotism has always posed a threat to globalization, and they have added few political clashes as an instance to prove their points. What I want to say that our first speaker have already proved that patriotism and globalization can coexist in the best and the worst case scenario. So it would be absurd to define patriotism based on 0.01% tiny minority political extremist or nationalist. Our first speaker and our side of the house has already pointed out how a patriot's will to promote national economy has created an atmosphere for the global trade to flourish. Our side has presented a statement that patriotism not only helps to promote national economy and makes a country prosper, but also lets it seek new ventures in other countries promoting global fraternity, which all of us can relate to. Our love for our nation has never stopped us from exploring the world with our own unique values, beliefs, and identity, because we know that only globalization can help us understand what is best for our country. So there's no way patriotism can be a threat to globalization. Moving on, we have no logical interpretations, but also facts and figures proving our arguments. The World Value Survey clearly depicts how maximum percentage of globalists in the world are patriots, challenging the binary belief of the proposition. We have also distinctly highlighted the fact that when it comes to global issues, we not only show our love for our country, we also do not fail to care for the world. Patriots right now are following the globally finalized guidelines by WHO as the preventive measures for COVID-19. This shows that patriots do not hesitate to taste the fruit globalization has to offer. Moving on. Researchers at Oxford University of England, Harvard University of America, Wuhan Institute of Biological Products in China, Indian Council of Medical Research, and many other national institutions throughout the world are working on COVID-19 vaccines. Are they doing this to save themselves? Yes. Their family? Yes. Their country? Of course. And what about the world? Or maybe they are working day and night to eradicate coronavirus from the entire world, which includes them, their family, and their country. To conclude, the proposition team has generalized stereotype smear to desperately win this debate. We on our side have presented logics, reasonings, and evidences proving why patriotism is not danger in context of globalization and why we deserve to win. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Elena. Patriotism and globalization can
I'm done now. Thank you.
Okay, patriotism and globalization can exist together. Do you people agree with that? Let's say what our next participants does. Sanjeet Chaudhary, I'd like to request you to present your summary for the motion. Time limits 4 minutes. Sanjeet Chaudhary.
Yeah. So while concluding, I would like to first start with one of the examples. So during the entire debate, there has been lots of confusion between patriotism as love and nationalism as defense for one's country. So I would like to clarify this with an example. Like love, if it is exaggerated, it becomes bad for all the parties. The example I would like to present is love of a mother for her child. She has a very intimate and caring love for her child, but when it comes for the love of the child of other person, it is not the same and somehow biased, and this is natural with some exceptions to it. So in the same case, in the patriotism as well, when you love your country up to a certain limit, it is good, but when it goes beyond that limit, it becomes harmful for globalization. Few of the examples that our speakers have presented justify all these statements. the main thing that we had presented is that there have been several instances in history, like Nazi German, and many others, where because of the patriotism, they have restricted and they have found enemies within themselves. And the example that we have presented, the trade between Japan and USA after the World War II, they have now come up with so close that they seem to be a very supporting country for each other. And the example against patriotism that we had presented is the recent burning example of India and China, where they have started banning each other's applications, which is against globalization, and that is because of the patriotism. If we see our own country's example, if patriotism is just if it comes about let's say love of own country, our army is serving in British Army, Indian Army, and they are also serving in Singapore police. So all these things have intensified globalization and has helped us become a true global citizen. When it comes to a few of the examples that I would like to put forth is International Space Station, which is not the contribution of just one country, but the entire country, several other countries, for the mutual benefit of the human civilization. And few of the countries have restricted migrations from one country or the other. That is because of their patriotism against for their own country. When we are talking about USA, it has so much of patriotism that it several times it shows that we and puts restrictions on several things. For example, my time has been finished, or it's the warning bell?
It's warning bell.
All right. Yeah. So it has proved many times, like putting restrictions on the trade with China. Plus, it has also banned the migration of people from several countries, as well as it has backed out from Paris Agreement, and recently it has also backed out from funding of World Health Organization in this pandemic situation. And this is all against globalization, because the president or the people of the president of the USA wants his own country to flourish first. When it comes to globalization, all the developments that has happened to all in developed countries or in developing countries or even in underdeveloped countries, if it had to do something with patriotism, they would not have shared their discoveries with other people to use. So all these things we have is possible only because of globalization. If they would have had put their countries first, we would not have been able to utilize all these facilities, and right now we are using Zoom. This would also not have been possible. And if we are talking about the current pandemic, if any one particular countries come with the vaccine against this pandemic, if they would come and feel that, okay, first I will need to see my country and I don't want this to be a global phenomenon, they would restrict it. Thank you.
Thank you, Sanjeet. The references were really substantial. The participants, the time limit for the Grand Crossfire round is 3 minutes. You will start.
Okay, I have the question firstly. See, we have showed you the coexistence of globalization and patriotism in the best and worst case scenario of the world. In any phase of the world, our case has given the justice. But proposition side of the house is debating on the world which never existed before. Like the feeling of our country has never been eradicated wholly. Now, how can we let you introduce such random hypothetical issues into the real world without any mechanism and without any alternative of the patriotism?
Okay, let me answer this, Vivek. What we have been talking about, let me make this very clear. The affirmative team has been sticking to facts and evidences, and there is nothing hypothetical out here. Okay, so I'll give you a practical example how this patriotism has been dangerous for globalization. Let's talk about Brexit itself. Brexit is one example in which Great Britain decided to withdraw from the UN membership.
Okay, listen. You are just giving the one or two instances, right?
It is because Britain feared losing jobs to its own citizen over immigrants.
You are
So it
saying
is
that
one
you are saying
feeling of
that
patriotism that led to
you're saying that patriotism is dangerous in the globalization, but you are not giving any alternatives to the patriotism. Like, there is the globalization, and you are not even talking about the global governments, and you are not giving any alternatives and any mechanisms for the world to move ahead.
Okay, let me answer
You're
this,
just
Vivek.
saying that
Okay, let me
dangerous, and
make
that's
this
all.
very
That's
clear.
not,
Okay,
that is not in
globalization
the
is
real
a
world.
concept. Globalization is a concept which thinks of global citizenship at the end. Let's say talk about the goal of globalization is ultimately global community and international society. So statelessness is what globalization assumes in a very long run. So patriotism,
And you have not told any of them. You have not told any of them. You have not mentioned any mechanisms in your three speeches. And see,
let me add to her.
We are making it clear right now. When you question it, we answer it, Vivek.
Yeah, we are here to discuss how patriotism is dangerous for globalization. When we will start talking about globalization, it will be it cannot be covered within a limited time provided by the jury. So let's not talk about globalization. Let's talk about here why patriotism is dangerous.
Okay. We have the given context of the globalization, right? We have the given context of the globalization, and you are telling that the patriotism is dangerous. But we are not providing any alternative to the patriotism. Okay. The next question for you, you have not given the answer correctly. The next question is the principle of
put my point first. See,
the principle of the globalization is simply the. Okay, let me complete my question. The principle of globalization is simply to reduce the inequalities, right?
Put the point of research. The research has no base.
Okay, listen to me. Listen to me.
You said more than 70% of the
Okay, listen to me. I have a deeper question for you. Okay, listen to me.
They are patriotic, and they also said that 70% of the population were global citizens. But you didn't mention what 70.
I want to ask a question to the proposition team, please. Your first speaker said that patriotism and nationalism are different things. Your second speaker said that same thing. His first speaker said that patriotism and nationalism are different. The second speaker said that I agree that
patriotism is the
and your third speaker said that you said that patriotism and nationalism are same thing. So what makes sense?
I have to mute you all, please. The time given for this year is already completed, so thank you for all that. Now we are almost at the end of the debate. For the final conclusion, I would like to call Miss Karuna to present her final focus speech against the motion. Karuna, time for you is 2 minutes, please.
I would like to draw the attention of the panel towards a very falsified argument which contradict with themselves. Like the speakers comes up here, first speaker comes up here, and the argument of the first speaker contradict with second one. So the whole debate has gone crazy. Even though they have sought the very falsified argument like colonization, internet service not part of the patriotism. Let me tell you one thing. In the post-war generation, when the connection towers were barren by the Nazis or barren by the war troop, that connection tower hub were changed into telecommunication hub. So the internet was born that way. And even the postmodernism urges on the concept of the coexistence, not a singular pattern rule. And our team has given the argument that global. So by all this point, we are very, very proud to oppose. And since the argument of the affirmative side contradict with themselves, it is a very, very easy win for the team opposition, because we have sought three major arguments, and in that three major arguments, there are many sub-arguments like global problem need globalized solution, in which like global organization like UN, SAARC, NATO comes in act. So by all these points, by all these arguments and sub-arguments, it is the very, very easy win for the team negative. So very, very proud to oppose. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Karuna. Negative side is really comfortable and confident, and the positive and negative side has gone hand by hand till now. Let's see how Mr. Sanjeet Chaudhary can give final finish to the affirmative side. Do they can match the negative side or win or lose? final focus speech. Mr. Sanjeet Chaudhary, 2 minutes.
Yeah, sure. Am I audible?
Yes, you are audible.
Yeah. Okay. So first thing I would like to put forth is our opponent team is already prejudiced. They have already come with the focus that whatever comment that has been put forth by affirmative team is falsified, because they have time and again used the term falsified, which is not falsified. They have also mentioned that our point, our speakers contradict each other's point, which is again not. I guess they were so focused on putting their point forth that they could not listen what we were actually putting forth, and they were already prejudiced that we are going to put forth the falsified statement, which is, I guess, wrong. Again, the research that I was talking about, they put forth a research outcome, and they said that more than 70% of the people said that they were patriotic, and at the same time 70% of the people said they support globalization and they feel they are a global citizen. But they didn't provided any base. Was the data, was the sample size normally distributed to represent the population? It might not be. Were the 70% population who said that we are a global citizen, were the same who said that we are patriotic? It might be like 40% of them were patriotic, but 30% of them were not. Right? So this research, all the research does not always prove that it is right. Sometimes they contradict their own thing as well. And also, so we have put forth, we have not just given focus on the current scenario, but we have seen the entire human civilization, how patriotism and globalization has developed in times. So we have touched every nook and corner of human civilization, and that is why we think that our point has been very fantastic and has proved everything, and that is why we guess we are supposed to win. And I guess the jury would also agree with my points. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Sanjeet. Affirmative side looks.
Gaurav, you are again muted.
Okay, congratulations to all the participants. You have equally done a really good work. Negative and affirmative side are both too confident. Now it's on the hand of our jury. I think our judges are back with the result. Before announcing the result, I would like to request our judges to give some feedback to the participants. Give some guidelines for our club for the future. First, I would go with Binta Karkiju. Ma'am, please.
Thank you, host, for giving this opportunity. I'm truly blessed to be part of such an amazing debate competition you have organized, and congratulations to S Club for conducting it successfully. So I was actually loving the debate. It was like I was actually recalling the time I was debating. So, but I was thinking that it could have been more healthier. At the last of the part, all the participants were like jumping. It was like it was not that healthier. It could have been better. That's a suggestion. When you debate, you need to respect the opinion of your opponent. That is one part you have to always consider as a debater. And next thing is, we need to be clear on the topic. Today, the arguments were great, I would say, and you came up with very good data. You have done good research, which is very mandatory while debating. And every speakers were good in terms of fluctuation and tone of the speech, except Vivek. Vivek-ji, my personal suggestion for you that you were too fast. When you are on public speaking, you always have to think that, or you have to understand that you are delivering a speech so that the audience would understand. So if you will be speaking on your own, then it doesn't make sense. The audience should actually, it should reach out to the audience, right? So and while speaking. So in the days to come, it's better if you notice that and actually make your speech a bit clearer and bring fluctuation while you're speaking, right? prosing the tones, I mean, right, stressing the words that would make your speech more interesting. So Vivek, you were too fast. To be frank, it was hard for me to catch your argument and statements. So that is my suggestions for you. And regarding the topic, we could have discussed on why globalization is dangerous. Sorry, why patriotism is dangerous in the context of globalization. The debate was more oriented on the definition of patriotism and nationalism, and you guys were more focused on the definition. We could have been more focused on why patriotism is so dangerous in the context of globalization, and how does it stop the country to get benefited from the globalization. The affirmative team could have actually argued in that way. Some of you did or tossed a bit, but it was not satisfactory. And the negative team who spoke against the motion could have come up with an argument like why patriotism is not dangerous in the context of globalization. Yes, the patriotism and globalization could coexist, but how can you prove that? That could have been your argument point. And you could have brought more realistic and very clear examples while arguing. And you should have proved that why patriotism doesn't stop a country to get benefited out of the globalization. How we can be patriotic and globalized citizen at the same time. But I'm happy that the team who spoke against the motion brought this point at the middle of the debate. I can also announce the name. Sorry. Elena, I think, yeah, Elena also talked about it. It was nice argument you brought up. And yes, the idea of debate is to have a healthy discussion on the topic with argument and data. So you have brought data very wisely, you have researched well, but argument-wise, you have not that best today. So this is my suggestions for all of you as a former debater, and I can see your bright future, because debating is a very wonderful skill one need in the present context. So I encourage you to take part in such competitions in the days to come and improve your debating capacity. So be logical, be very rational in the topic, because there are things which are black and white. You cannot actually argument it and make black white and white black. There are clear things which are crystal clear, but with your data and argument, you need to rationalize your statement, right? So that is the actually importance of debate we should always consider. Thank you so much, the organizing team, for having me here. I'm very happy to be a part of it, and congratulations to all the participants, and I wish you best wishes in the days to come. And for S Club, you can come up with these kind of ideas in the days to come, and you could be more focused on how we can cope up with this crisis and how young people can tackle this crisis out of their innovative ideas. So upcoming debate could be on such topics, and it would be better if you could also bring some local representatives or concerned stakeholders who would actually get knowledge from the young debaters who would come up with very informative data and arguments in terms of tackling this kind of crisis. So that is my expectation from you, and thank you for having me.
Thank you, Binita Karkisyu. Those are really nice words of wisdom. Now, Mr. Raj Kharel, please.
Thank you so much, Vivek, and everyone of the organizing committee, and Priya, and all the debaters, and Binta ma'am, and everyone. I really enjoyed this debate. I enjoyed the topic more than the debate, and also the discussion that was happening in the chat. Lively through discussion. I think patriotism is really something that gets in our blood. On this, we get reached very soon. Let me tell you a few things about this debate in particular, staying inside the room. I'm not telling you what I believe is true. I'm not saying what I think is right. I'm saying I'm giving my feedbacks on the basis of what happened in the debate. I won't give you my personal feedbacks, my personal opinions. This debate, starting with the feedbacks, Sunny, let me tell you that you need to think of things that this debate is not about. Right? What are this debate about, Banani? What are this debate not about? This debate is not about whether or not patriotism is good in isolation. This debate is not about whether or not globalization is good in isolation. This debate is about, given that globalization is happening anyway, there exists the context of globalization in the world, whether or not will patriotism support it. And patriotism globalization support oppose. Is it dangerous or is it favorable? Favorable, it's not dangerous. So there needs to be a clear distinction between what the topic demands of you and what you're explaining. So as Binta ma'am rightly pointed out, I think this debate revolved a lot around defining what patriotism is, what globalization is, what nationalism is, and so many things like that, which are not really the crux of the debate. And given that you debate already 5 minutes, 4 minutes time already, I wanted to hear more about, given the globalization happens, what kind of a role does patriotism have during in the event of globalization? I wanted to hear about it more. But even in that case, I think the arguments that came up were really, really good, although not flag posted. Flag posted one, if you're talking about, let's say, Belt Road Initiative of China, if you're talking about, let's say, all these mobile applications, TikTok or YouTube or Facebook, all of these can come under either whether or not patriotism liberalizes or curtails the growth of innovation or the growth of economy. Wide topic. That's we're discussing. Categorical distinction. I think this debate will be much better. But having said that, then still the things that came up, although unstructured, were really, really nice. We heard about Belt Road Initiative, we heard about debt trap, we heard about tax war, trade sanctions, we heard about Paris Agreement, COVID-19, visa and travel restrictions, trades, applications, innovations. I think a lot of plethora of topics they covered, which is really, really nice. I think one way to improve your skill of argumentation is to make sure that you bring all the relevant topics together and argue from a strong front. I think it would be really, really nice. Coming down to the debate, the actual debate and the verdict, let me tell you, I'll just tell you which side won, and then I'll tell you why the winning side won and what the losing side could have done better. I think Binta ma'am and I personally, we started from different fronts, but then we later on agreed on a single decision, that is, affirmative team wins this debate. Affirmative team meaning Suyogya, Apeksha, and Sanjeet. The reasons are as follows. So the debate was categorized, like I said earlier, categorized. It really comes down to three different fronts. First is economic interest. Second is global issues. The third is liberty versus restriction. So let's discuss on each of them individually. Economic interest. While the negative team brought certain things about, let's say, Belt Road Initiative and how it was China's national interest, which is flourishing all over Asia and Eastern Europe and Northern Africa. I think the affirmative side really did a good job in saying that Belt Road Initiative, although is advancing democracy, although is expanding global connectivity, it's coming at the cost of debt trap to certain different countries. So the affirmative side was clear on saying that yes, it is advancing globalization, but it is expanding globalization in the expense of certain countries that are being entrapped by this debt, which is at the end of the day, which hampers globalization. I think one way to make that argument extend even further is by saying that globalization of development projects like Belt Road Initiative or Silk Road of the India Road projects, all of these always tend to favor the rich and powerful countries in the expense of less powerful countries, which means that only the rich and powerful countries are getting forward, whereas the poor countries are heading behind. So the national interest is actually diverting countries' affluence and creating a middle line between countries, they're segregating countries, which means that globalization is further curtailed. So this you can argue to a further extent. So this particular chunk of reasoning is mere reasoning. Has not been considered in the verdict. I'm just giving you feedback on how you could extend that argument. Even then, when the negative side brought things like DRI could be really helpful for development, the opposition, the affirmative side had a clear argument which said that DRI comes at the cost of debt trap to several different countries, and plus there are different trade wars and tax wars and trade sanctions from the US and all the powerful countries to countries in the Middle East. I think this was pretty clearly an argument that was heavier on the affirmative. Second class of this debate was global issues. Just like COVID-19 ko kuraharuदेखि लिएर Paris Convention ko kuraharu. I think affirmative, negative once again did a very good job in saying that because of national interest, people who environment related interests, it went patriotism we could induce things like the UN or the Paris Convention. Yes, that was a really well-reasoned argument, but that couldn't stand when the opposition and our side people said that countries like US back out from associations like Paris Convention to protect their national interest, which is that they value economic well-being more than their environmental well-being. So when they say that because of patriotism or because of national interests, all of these global issues or global urgency comes secondary to countries, secondary to patriotism. I think regardless of how important these conventions are or how strong UN as an organization is, if when it comes to their own economic or whatever well-being, if patriotism comes before globalization in these global issues, I think this particular clash has been taken away by the affirmative for me. Third, there were issues like liberty versus restriction, where the negative side argued that liberty we have internet. Because someone from some country discovered internet, and that happened to be a patriotic issue, and then that went to prosper throughout the world. Liberty there is another side which says restrictions. Yes, where there are technological advancement founded in certain countries and that gets spread throughout the world because of certain issues like patriotism, other forms of technology such as Facebook, YouTube, and TikTok are being banned in certain countries because of patriotism. So the extent to which internet was flourished, but the extent to which all these applications are banned precisely because of patriotism. And the opposite, the spreading of internet is not necessarily a contribution of patriotism. It's innovation and business and globalization. It's not necessarily patriotism. What patriotism actually does is curtails the expansion of apps like TikTok, Facebook, and Google in certain countries because of patriotism. So I think to restriction, liberty versus restriction clash company, I think it somehow goes to the affirmative side. So I would say that the negative side, although they had really interesting arguments, really interesting arguments. Still, I think the one extra layer of effort in contextualizing that argument and strengthening those arguments. You say ek level extra way. I think you had a great chance. In your personal marking scheme, the affirmative wins the negative only by 1 mark. I mean, I guess for the 120 margin, only 1 mark is affirmative. So having said that, I would say that this was a really, really, really close debate. But certain distinctions in the debate was at no point of time classified into economic interest, global issues, liberty versus restriction. So all the debaters keep in mind that from the beginning of your debate, if you start making things and classifying things into 3 things or 4 things, or even issues or economic, global restrictions, classify first, yes, they might win certain things, but we win certain things. Arguments, analysis, strong. I think the negative side also had a great chance. So that being said, I think there are 2 more positions to announce. Pinta ma'am and I, we discussed in length. The best speaker of this debate goes to Karuna. and the best debater of this debate goes to Sanjeet. And that's how we'll decide on the verdict. Over to the organizers.
Thank you, Raj Khalil sir, for your nice words of wisdom. Thank you for that. Was a really good feedback and suggestion for the clubs and the participants themselves. As we all know, that Raj Khalil sir has already announced, the best speaker for the motion is Karuna Budhathoki. Speaker for the speaker is the Karuna Budhathoki, and the best debater against the motion is Mr. Suyog Chaudhary. Congratulations to all the participants and the winners. Your debating skills were really good. We look forward that help all the audiences, participants, and the club members to improve and build our debating skills too. All the participants and winners will be getting the digital certificate from our club very soon. So with this, I would like to officially announce that the S debate competition has finally come to an end. Our S Club team will definitely come up with other skillful yet entertaining programs, events. So till then, thank you to all. Stay safe, stay tuned to our S Club, help us grow. Thank you all. I'd like to end this debate. Thank you for your participation.